Y'all knew this was coming. We do this live, and let me make sure we're live on Facebook. Are we live? Facebook, we are live. And let me make sure my comment is pinned. I want that comment. It's the wrong comment. As y'all are coming in, shout yourselves out. Tell me your name and your location. Tell me your name and location. Sometimes when I post this on, I post it on YouTube, people still tell me their names and location. Y'all can do that too. As y'all coming in on Facebook, let's do it. Y'all know the deal. Y'all knew this was coming. Y'all knew I was going to talk about this. I actually like talking about this stuff. This is entertaining to me. I don't usually talk about current events, but when I do talk about current events, I'm going to come correct because I know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to break this down the way that people you have heard talking about it have not yet broken it down. They have not addressed it the way that I'm going to address it. We got about exactly 40 minutes here. So I got a call coming up in a minute. But we're going to break this down. We're going to get into it. So you can tell me your name and location in the comments. If you don't, that's all right. You can just listen. You might jump in the comments and have something else to say once I get talking. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Jordan from Toronto. Shout out to Toronto. That's word to Toronto. So high up, I got birds in the condo. Oh. Anyway, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year pro athlete, author of 33 books. I've done 4 TED Talks, created this whole brand called Work on Your Game. And what we do here is real simple. We take the mental tools and the strategies to help athletes get to the top 1% of sports, and we translate them over to the business world to help professionals like yourselves perform at a higher level, make more money, perform at a higher level, be more consistent, and make more money. It's always that smart guy QB stereotype. That's not. I mean, it's not really what Deion said. We'll get into that, but that's not really what he said. North Carolina's in the house. Shout out to North Carolina. So what we want to talk about is Deion Sanders. What he said. Is he wrong? And I'm going to address this in a way that, again, has not been addressed by other people. Timothy over there on Facebook was good. Good afternoon to you. So what we're going to talk about is what he said. And those of you who don't know who Deion is, most of you probably do. He's the head coach at the University of Colorado now. He just got the job at the end of last football season. So he didn't start coaching yet as of this recording. He used to coach at Jackson State, which is an HBCU, historically black colleges and universities. And he was talking to the guys at the NFL Network, because Deion used to work at the NFL Network before he started being a head coach. And he was just talking to his guys over there, and they were asking him, well, Deion, what kind of players do you want to recruit? Because recruiting is a huge part of college sports. So if you don't have talent, doesn't matter how good of a coach you are, you're not going to win. So Deion was saying, and I'm gonna actually read what he said, so we're all quoted here. And the full disclosure, I give full disclosure up front. First of all, I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on this subject, so I'm not going to be as detailed in this video and this live that I will be on my podcast. When I go on my podcast, I'm going to give all the details here. I'm going to kind of go over things at a little bit of a higher level, simply because, number one, we got a time crunch, and number two, I want to give enough space for y'all to be able to comment and respond to the comments. And number three, I'm going to go in more detail on the podcast. So Deion was an athlete that I liked a lot, growing up, because I played baseball, and I played a little bit of baseball, a little bit of football before I got into basketball. And Deion, of course, played football and baseball. But at the same time, I'm a person who has no problem being completely objective about a person. Even if I like them, even if I'm a fan of theirs, I can be objective about them. So I've said things about family members, friends of mine, people I work with. Even though I like them, I have affinity for them, I can still be objective about them or their actions or their words if I happen to disagree with it. So Deion, just because I liked Deion Sanders as a football player, does not mean I can't be objective about things that he does or things that he said. So let's get into this. So here's what Deion said. He was talking to these people on NFL Network. They asked him what kind of players you want. I'm going to quote what he said. He said, we want smart, tough, fast, disciplined with character. Quarterbacks are different. So here's where he gets into specifics. He says, with a quarterback, we want somebody who has a mother and father, 2 parents at home. We want that kid to have a 3.5 GPA. He got to be smart. He can't make bad decisions off the field. He has to be a leader of men. There are so many different attributes of what we look for. We love a coach's son. That's what we look for in quarterbacks. Then he went on to say, for offensive linemen, we also want 2-parent homes with a strong father that they adhere to. They also need to be smart, 3.3 GPA, be tough, physical. Defensive line is the opposite. He said, I want a single mother, somebody on freelance, just trying to make it. He's trying to rescue mama. I want him to just go get it. We know what we got to go get it. He's looking for that kid that comes from a baby mama. That was his statement. Now, I want you to individually and objectively assess that statement. And I want all of you to think about, is there anything wrong with what he said? Because that's what I'm going to talk about here today. Is there anything wrong with this? Because there are a lot of people who had some challenges to what Deion said. And they said that he was basically talking about negative black stereotypes about kids that have, their mom, not their child, but their mom is a baby mama, meaning dad is not home, dad's not around. He wants those kids who come from those kind of environments for his defensive line, as opposed to his quarterback and his offensive line. He wants somebody that comes from two-parent homes with a high GPA, because notice he didn't say anything about GPA for defensive linemen, right? He didn't mention every position, by the way, either. He played defensive back. He didn't even mention those guys. At least in the quote that went viral, he didn't mention them. But with quarterbacks and offensive linemen, he wants a certain GPA, and he wants a leader of men, somebody who listened to his parents, someone who had both parents around. All right, so I'm asking, do people think anything's wrong with that? Leo said, feel like he could be a little too picky. Well, possibly, but when you're talking about a quarterback, it ain't that many of them, so you actually can be picky because you're trying to pick from a very small pool that you're dipping in the first place. So I get what you're saying, but possibly. Always trying to say Nick Saban hasn't said it is the blueprint, that you basically, are you iterating that many coaches look at it this way? I agree that many coaches look at it this way. Deion just happened to say it out loud, and because Deion is black and because he has the cachet with quote unquote the culture to where he could say it, he could get away with it and still have his job. Now, he did get attacked for saying it. Well, he got attacked, quote unquote, on social media. I mean, I don't know if that has any relevance to him himself, but people did talk about it. But let's say a white guy says that. If Nick Saban had said that, for example, Nick Saban, if he had said the same words that Deion said, Nick Saban he probably wouldn't lose his job because he's Nick Saban. But let's say some white coach who's been around for 4 years that said that, he would probably get fired for saying that. Even though, again, I do believe that that is a blueprint. So we're going to talk about that blueprint. And Property Brother said nothing wrong. He was just breaking down the mindset theoretically, right? He's just breaking down the mentality, right? And it's not that he said it, because I was on Twitter today, because Bomani Jones, who I feel, Bomani Jones is popular, but I feel Bomani has very little substance. He's jumped into the race hustler game. I replied to a tweet that he had posted on Twitter today, and he replied back like, oh, basically, you're not saying anything, LOL. And then a bunch of people responded to, because Bomani basically drew a lot of attention to the tweet because he responded to my tweet. And what I said to Bomani was that you're making it all about race. Deion didn't actually mention race. Now, yes, he did work at HBCU and he is black. And when he says baby mama, usually when we say baby mama, we're talking about black people because that's a phrase that became popular in black culture. I don't know why people want to have ownership over that as a black person, but we don't even want to get into that. So many people, again, said Deion, as he was coaching at Colorado and at the HBCU, took exception to what he said. They felt like he was pushing stereotypical ideas about the black community. This is a stereotypical idea of the two-parent households and the high GPA and listen to your father. I guess that's white, quote unquote, because this is what Bomani said. Bomani actually said, you're at Colorado and now you're talking like those white people. He actually said that on his TV show. And when he said it, the studio audience applauded. Now, I don't know if that was piped in applause, but there were people in the audience actually clapping. And pause connection. I got a pause connection when I just said that. Instagram starts doing these pause connections when I start talking about real stuff. So he started getting an applause from the studio audience. He said this like he was really making a very, very solid point. Bomani Jones, that is, because it was like a 2-minute clip from his show that he posted on Twitter. That's what I responded to. And a lot of black people on the same lines, and white people as well, people who I guess they call themselves, what's the word? They're like advocates for black people. The white people got BLM in their bios and all that. Those people, they attacked Deion as well, or attacked his statement. They didn't really attack him. They attacked his statement. So they say that Deion is trying to filter out certain black kids based on these stereotypes simply because they don't have both parents at home or they might not have a high GPA, etc. So as far as what Deion is doing, is he filtering players out based on their backgrounds and based on their upbringing? Is that what he's doing? If he is actually doing this, because he was talking to the guys at NFL Network, it was kind of like an offhand conversation, even though they knew they were on the air. He was kind of just saying it. It's not like he was presenting it as like a Bill of Rights or the 10 Commandments, but he did say it. Is he filtering players out? Yes, he is filtering players out. That's exactly what he's doing. He's saying, I want a player with a 3.5 GPA with two parents at home who had a father that he listened to. All right, that's what I want for my offensive lineman, and that's what I want for my quarterback. I want somebody who is smart, who is getting really high grades in class. I guess that's what I want. Now, some people say, again, they said, well, you're stereotyping. He didn't really stereotype anybody. Actually, in what he said, he didn't say black people do this. He didn't say black people. He didn't say anything about race. Again, all he said was what he wants in his players, which he has a right to do. Any of you who's ever gotten a job, guess what your job posts when they post a job listing? They post what they want. They say, this is what we want. If you want to work here, you got to have this, 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 and this. Isn't that, any of you ever not seen that before? Has any of you ever hired a person before? Do you post that in your job listing? You want to work here, you got to be proficient in Google Docs and Microsoft Word. You got to know how to use YouTube. You got to be good on the phone. You got to be fluent in English if you're hiring somebody from outside of the USA. Has any of you ever seen a job listing and said that? What's wrong with that? Is that racist? Is it racist to know what you want in a job position? Deion Sanders is one of hundreds of college football coaches. If you don't like his parameters, go play for somebody else. If you're that good, if you're good enough to be considered by Deion, you could be considered by a whole bunch of other colleges. So I don't understand why people are getting so upset about this. But what Deion is doing, let's be clear, what Deion is doing is saying that. Again, and we're going to assume here, all right? We're going to make an assumption because, again, the way he said it, if you listen to it, it was kind of offhand. They were kind of just shooting the breeze when he said it. But let's just say that's the way he actually recruits. And when he recruits, he really does want a quarterback with a 3.5 who has two parents at home. And his offensive lineman, he wants a 3.3 with two parents. And the defensive lineman, he wants somebody who's hungry and they got a baby mom and no father in their lives and they miss some meals growing up. And let's just say that that's what he really wants. Okay, let's assume that that's true. All right. The rest of this conversation is based on that assumption. He's doing the same thing that we all do every single day. You too. We call it profiling. That's what Deion's doing. He's profiling. What does profiling mean? Profiling means you have a certain idea of what you want in a person for whatever reason, and you look at their surface level traits and you make a decision about them without going any deeper. And you make a decision about whether or not they can go to the next step in the process based on the way that they show up. That is called profiling, and every human being on the planet profiles. We all profile. Okay, we do it every single day. You have a certain set of ideas about how certain people from certain places conduct themselves in certain ways, and you adjust your actions based on those beliefs. There's not a single person listening to me who does not do that. And all of us have done it at least one time today so far, let alone your whole life. We all do it. If you're a female and you're walking around at night down a street, and a poorly lit street, and you see three men walking in your direction with hoodies over their heads, are you going to walk straight through them, or are you going to try to cross the street and find somewhere with some good lighting so you could possibly be safe just in case they're up to no good? You're probably going to think about it. Whether you cross the street or not is going to cross your mind. The fact that you thought about it, you profile. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a whole book about it. It's called Blink. It's how we make snap decisions in life. And we make thousands of decisions every day based on these snap judgments. And are some of them, if you want to call them stereotypes, you want to call them preconceptions, we all do it. So anybody who comes out talking about, well, this is wrong, or we got to train people out of doing this all of this happened back 3 years ago. Remember back when they had the guys in Starbucks? It was two black guys in Starbucks, and they tried to use the bathroom, and then the Starbucks employee called the cops, and the guys got kicked out of Starbucks, and then Starbucks shut down their stores and retrained their whole staff for a whole day and all this stuff about unconscious bias and all this stuff. You can't train that out of a person. It's wired in us as humans. You can't train that. So whatever Starbucks did that day, they didn't train anybody on anything. All they did was make people more conscious about it. But you can't train that out of somebody because it's part of our wiring as human beings. That everybody, I keep getting pause connections here, but everybody is wired to make snap judgments about other people based on our preconceived notions, our preconceptions about what's what. You see somebody walking down a dark street at night with a hoodie over their head, it's going to flash through your brain this person might be up to something. So either if you're a man and you feel like you can defend yourself, it crosses your mind that I might need to. And if you're a woman and you probably can't defend yourself against a guy that size, it crosses your mind that I might need to cross the street. Why? Because that's a preconceived notion. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's profiling is what keeps us alive, as a matter of fact. Going back to the caveman days, we learned that if there was some rustling in the bushes around the corner, that might mean a saber-tooth tiger, and we better be careful and get the hell out of there or get ready to kill the tiger, one or the other. Otherwise, we would lose our lives if we didn't have that preconception in our minds. So what Deion is communicating is the same thing that, again, has been wired in all of us since way back in the days. So if you're a hiring manager at a company, for example, and someone comes for a job interview, to your office for a job interview, are you noticing how clean their suit is, or if their hair is done, or how clean their shoes are? They got any scuff marks on their cuffs? Do you notice these things? Of course you do. And you're profiling that person, and you're making judgments about them, whether or not they're going to move to round 2 in the interview process based on that. When you're the one going to the interview, do you make sure that your makeup is right, that your hair is right, that your teeth are clean, that your shoes are shined, that your suit looks good before you go into that job interview? Of course you do. Why? Because you know you're going to be profiled the second that you walk into the room. And you want to make the best possible impression. When you go on a date, you do the exact same thing. When you take a photo, you go to a photo shoot, you do the same thing. When you put a picture of yourself up on a website or a social media platform. Well, not everybody does this, but let's say the people who are trying to build a brand and you want to look like a star, we do this. Why? Because we want to make a good impression, because we understand we're being profiled by other people. And the actions that we take in life, our resumes, are going to be profiled. When someone looks you up and they hear about you for the first time, what's the first thing many people do? They go look you up on a social media platform, or they look you up on Google, and what are they looking at? Your resume. They want to know, what have you done in your life? And they're going to make a judgment about who you are, what you're worth, and how good you are or how good you're not, based on what they can find out about you. This is exactly what Deion Sanders is doing. He is taking a generality and saying, in general, he wants a quarterback that has these traits. He wants offensive linemen with these traits, a defensive lineman with these traits, because of his subjective knowledge of the game, which I would agree. I think we all can agree, as a head coach, he probably has a good amount of it. And also being that he's an ex-player, but you could even forget about that. Just being a coach. He has a significant amount of subjective knowledge about the game that tells him this is generally what works for me in this position. And being that he's the boss, he gets to make that call. That's the way that it works. He's the boss, so he gets to make the call as to what he wants and how he wants to profile people. Can we agree that different jobs and different companies in the same industry have different parameters for how they hire people? Can we agree that this is true? Can we agree that if you want to go get a job as a trainer at Equinox, the requirements may be different than if you get a job as a trainer at Planet Fitness? All right, it's different. All right, they got different parameters. There's the same industry, but they have different parameters. One place requires this, one place requires this. Why? Because they get to make their rules. They get to make their rules. A lot of people like to talk about during the whole COVID situation, during the whole time when people are getting canceled for whatever their opinions they put out and all that stuff, right? People losing book deals and people getting fired from companies and losing speaking gigs and stuff because they put out the quote unquote wrong opinion. You know what a lot of people like to say about that? Well, that's a private company. They get to make whatever decision they want. Well, guess what? A university's football program is, I don't know if we can call them a private company, so to speak, because a lot of colleges are tax exempt. So I don't know, they don't fit into the same thing, but they're private in terms of they get to make their own rules, how they want to do things. The coach of a football program is in charge. They get to make the decision about here's the kind of players we want, here's the kind of players we don't want, and this is how it's going to go as long as I'm the coach. And if the coach decides to change the rules, they can change the rules, but as long as they're the coach and these are the rules that coach wants, they're the boss. They get to make the rules about how things go. They have a right to do that. The same way that Starbucks has a right to do what they want to do, and Ross can do what they want to do, and McDonald's can do what they want to do, because inside of their ecosystem, they can do things how they want to do them. The only thing Deion did that got people mad was he said it out loud. Now, it's not the fact that he was doing it, it's the fact that he said it out loud and people are getting mad. Well, he's putting out a negative racist stereotype. What exactly is the racist stereotype? He talks about baby mamas. Do baby mamas exist? That's not a stereotype. It's not a stereotype that there are baby mamas. That's not a stereotype at all. It's not a stereotype that there are black kids who are growing up without fathers in their lives, and due to that, subjectively, that they may not have as much, they may not have had another pause connection when I start talking about this. They may not have had as easy an upbringing as someone who had both parents at home. Therefore, life may have been a little tougher for them. Therefore, Deion wants them. He wants to put them on the team because of that tough upbringing. They're going to have a little bit more of a nasty streak inside of them. And therefore, he wants them on the defensive line where you got to be nothing but nasty. And that's going to help his team perform. That's actually a great formula. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a great formula for success. And Deion has been successful so far in his college coaching career. I think we all have to agree to that. All right. Even if you don't agree with what he said, I think we all can agree to that. He was successful where he was at. Successful enough that he got a job at a bigger and better school, and he's doing a pretty good job of recruiting so far. I think we all have to agree to that. Even again, if you disagree with the framework with which he made his decision, we all profile. If you ever use a dating app, any of you ever use a dating app and you were scrolling through the pictures and you said, no, why? You don't know the person. You don't know anything about them. All you did was look at the picture and you said, I'm not interested. Everybody does that. Everybody does that. Again, we do it every single day. Any of you has ever hired somebody or you ever been hired? The people who do the hiring, they do this. They go through the resumes. No, maybe, no. We do this every single day. We profile based on surface level information. We do not take the time to go deep. Martin Luther King said, And I don't know what year that was. He gave the I Have a Dream speech back before I was born. He said, I have a dream that one day people will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Martin Luther King is still dreaming because that does not happen. We do not go deep into the content of people's character. We look at the surface things we can find out about them, whether it's how they look, whether it's what they said, whether it's what somebody else said they said, whether it's what somebody else said about them, and we judge people based off this little tiny bit of information, and we make final decisions about people based on a little piece of information, even when the information is not even accurate. We all do this. All Deion did was say it out loud. That's all he did. People, especially black folks, making noise about what Deion said, don't have a problem with profiling. See, you think that these black folks, the Bomani Joneses of the world and others, there are so many others who said something about what Deion said as if it was so wrong that he made this statement. All right, these people don't have a problem with profiling. They don't have a problem with profiling at all. They just have a problem when the profiling seems to affect the group that they claim to be advocating for. Again, I talked about this in an episode of my show. I talked about the race hustler. This is like 2 years ago. I talked about the race hustler. These are people. There are white race hustlers. There are black race hustlers and people in between whose whole business is based around take a subject, make it all about race, whether it is tangentially about race, it's surface level about race, or deeply about race. They make it all about race, and they go deeper on the race thing. They double and triple down on it being about race, and then they claim to be outraged or saddened or disgusted about the situation because they're positioning themselves as being advocates for the disadvantaged, disenfranchised black folks out there who want to see themselves as victims. The reason why this is a great hustle, the reason why race hustling is a hustle, is because there are a whole bunch of black and brown people in America and in the world at large who see themselves as victims, and they're looking for reasons to feel like victims. These race hustlers see this opportunity and they jump on it, and this is an opportunity for them to make money, draw fans, get attention, and do what they do. And it just basically, the cycle just repeats itself. The great thing about I got another pause connection on Instagram. That y'all see this keeps happening at certain times, right? Great thing, if any of you wants to get into the race hustling industry, is wide open. All right, you can get a job in race hustling, any kind of local or national government. You can get a job race hustling, anything that is bureaucratic, like corporate America, academia, and social media. You can rise very quickly in any of these spaces if you get into the race hustling racket and you simply just take any subject, make it about race, make black people or yourself, if you happen to be black, be the victim, and you be the advocate for those people. You can get a lot of attention. Now, your ability to monetize that attention is up to you. You can get a lot of attention race hustling. All right. Okay. Again, Bomani Jones is the example because his tweet is what I responded to this morning that he responded back to that got me engaging with some people on Twitter about this very thing. So these folks don't have a problem they have no problem whatsoever with profiling. So for example, if one of these race hustlers, let's say Bomani Jones has his TV show, right? And somebody comes to the studio audience, because it sounds like he has a studio audience, right? And somebody comes to the show with a Donald Trump MAGA hat on, Make America Great Again, red hat on their head, and sitting in his audience. What's going to happen? I bet they probably wouldn't let that guy sit in the audience with that hat on. They would either kick the guy out of the room, or they would make him take the hat off, or they would confiscate the hat, or Bomani would do a segment talking about that guy with the hat and how he's bad and how he's promoting separationists and white nationalism and negativity and racism just by wearing a hat. You don't know nothing about the guy. He might have just been wearing a hat just to see what would happen and doesn't even like Donald Trump. But because he has the hat on, he would be profiled and attacked and talked about, and they would do all kinds of things to him just because he had the hat on. You know nothing about the guy. So they don't have a problem profiling. Just they got a problem with profiling when it happens to be allegedly against a group that they claim to be advocating for. Because I told you, that's why it's called the race hustler. This is just a hustle for them. Do they really believe the stuff that they're saying? I doubt it. I don't think they really believe the stuff they're saying. I think they say what they got to say because it gets them paid. It keeps the paycheck coming in, and everybody got bills. So I ain't mad. I ain't knocking their hustle. I want y'all to be clear about the race hustler. All right, I've done whole episodes on this. I am not knocking the hustle of the race hustler. Keep hustling. If that's what works for you, if that allows you to feed your family and pay your bills, as long as you're not hurting anybody with it, keep race hustling. I actually enjoy seeing how far these people are willing to go with their hustle. But this is a hustle. All right? It's a hustle, meaning they just got to keep it up and keep pretending to be about what I don't think they're really about. And again, that's just my subjective opinion in order for them to keep the money coming in. And there are a lot of race hustlers out there. There are race hustlers in entertainment. There are race hustlers in corporate America. You want to know what the race hustlers are in corporate America? Just look at any company and just look up their diversity, equity, and inclusion department. All of that is a hustle. What exactly is this diversity, inclusion, and equity wing of an organization? What do they actually do? They give jobs to people that otherwise couldn't get a job there based on them being gay, female, or black. That's what the DIE department does on a college campus. That y'all also notice as affirmative action. What does affirmative action do? It puts people who are unqualified to get into a college, and people who are unqualified to get a job into a job. That's what it does. And studies have been done, and subjective info has been shared by professors who say, look, these kids are not qualified to get into the school, but they're getting put into the school behind affirmative action over a kid who was overqualified to be in the school. And then the underqualified kid goes to this school they shouldn't have been in the first place, and they fail out because they were not good enough to handle the academic rigor on this college campus. But nobody talks about that part because that's the other end of it, that if you actually put that out there, then the people who are advocating for it will look bad. They will look stupid, so they don't put that out. They just leave that part, conveniently to leave that part out of the story. This is the part they don't tell you about, and this is why you got to do your own. If you got to do your own research these days, that's a different subject for a different day that I've already talked about. As a matter of fact, I've talked about it in past days. The whole point here is people don't have a problem profiling, and they don't have a problem with some kind of unfairness happening against the group, as long as it's false connection, as long as it's for or against the group that they are a fan of, or they again claim to be advocating for. This is the hustle. This is the race hustle. So any of you want to know what race hustling is? This is the race hustle. And you know somebody's race hustling when, easy way to tell is that anytime a subject comes up where race wasn't even mentioned, this person makes it all about race, and then they go argue against something that nobody even actually said. All right, this is actually a logical fallacy, which is what these people, they have to keep up logical fallacies. Is the only way they can keep their jobs. Because again, if they don't talk about race, what else are they going to talk about? They don't really have any substance to add to the conversation. So they have to make it into something that they can talk about, which is race, and something that they can't be wrong about, because it's all about race. And that all goes back to the feelings, and it goes back to the emotions and all of that stuff. And this is where all this goes. That's what the race hustling conversation is. And the great thing about it, again, is that you can use it on any angle. From any angle, it works. That's the great thing about race hustling. If I wanted to be a race hustler, I would be the best there is out there. Anyway, so if you look specifically at what Deion said, all right, he says he's looking for a quarterback, a leader of men who came from a 2-parent home and has a certain GPA. What's wrong with that? Anybody got a problem with that? I don't have a problem with that. Now, Deion played football. He played in college. He played in the pros. He's coached in college. What's wrong with that? That's what he's looking for based on his criteria, based on what he knows and his subjective view of what it takes to be a good quarterback. And being that he's in charge, he can want what he wants. It's just like any of you females out there who are single, you want a certain type of man. What kind of man do you want? All right, any ladies who are watching this right now, how many ladies watching this, you want a man who is over 6 feet tall? All right, isn't that discriminatory against dudes who are 5'8"? Now, the average man is like 5'8", 5'9". All right, so why would you discriminate against the average man? Why do you want a man who's 6 feet tall? Is there something wrong with that? Oh, there's nothing wrong with that when it's what you want. But when it's what somebody else wants happens to exclude you or someone who you happen to advocate for, that's when there's a problem. See, that's the hustle. That's the hustle right there. Is that, see, people don't have a problem with discrimination. They don't have a problem with discrimination as long as the discrimination favors them. Is when someone else is discriminating in a way that excludes you or excludes someone who you claim to be supporting, that's when all of a sudden there's a problem. That's the issue that people have. Swiftly says, what he said about the D-line was the problem. He said he wants kids who come from, I talked about this. He said he wants kids who come from a single parent home. There's a baby mama as their mom. Not they have a kid, but their mom is a baby mama. They miss some meals. They're hungry and they need to just go get it because again, they don't have they may not have had as stable an upbringing. They're a little bit hungrier. They probably will be a little bit meaner, a little bit nastier. And that's what he wants on the D-line because he knows what the D-line needs. Well, let's talk about this. Deion Sanders played played football in college. He played in the pros. And he's coached in college. He's seen a lot of football. I would bet that if we ask Deion through his subjective experience, the best D linemen that he has played with and coached come from the same background that he laid out when he was talking to the NFL Network. I would bet that subjectively there's a reason why he said that. Now, that's just my theory. I don't think that Deion saw a whole bunch of 2-parent households, 3.5 GPA defensive linemen who were great. And that's why he didn't mention the GPA. He mentioned baby mama, come from a hungry place, coming from the hood, coming from the ghetto on that defensive lineman because those guys are the nastiest and they end up being the best defensive lineman. What's wrong with that? That's not a problem. I say that's smart. Now, again, I think all college football coaches probably think similarly to what Deion was saying. It's just he's the one who said it out loud because he had the cachet to get away with it. That's the only real problem people have. It's not that he said it, it's that he said it out loud. But actually it's a good thing for them because the race hustlers now can use that for content. I mean, Bomani Jones did a whole segment about it on his show. Well, I don't know if it was a segment, but he talked about it. He ate up some airtime by talking about this. Somebody said it has nothing to do with how good the lineman is. Well, I disagree. Yes, it does. It does have something to do with how good they are. I just explained it, that it's the energy, it's the mean streak, it's the nastiness, it's the fact that they're hungry, it's the fact that they came from a certain place. The same way that looking for a quarterback with a 3.5 GPA and having two parents at home, that has nothing to do with how well you can throw a football. Logically, does it? Theoretically, no, but does it? Yes, it does. Because the fact that you had two parents at home means what? It means that you had a lot of structure at home, and a quarterback needs to understand structure because they got to know that playbook. You got a 3.5 GPA. What does that mean? That means you go to class, you show up in class, you're respectful of your teachers, and you know how to follow through on assignments, which means when you're a quarterback and you need to know the entire playbook, you need to know the wide receiver's job, the offensive lineman's job, the running back's job, what every defensive player is doing, what the linebacker's doing, what the safety's about to do, who's about to blitz, are they in man coverage and zone coverage. You need to be able to download and understand all of that within 40 seconds. You call the right play and make the right read. Does the fact that you can do that in the classroom, does it translate over to the football field? Theoretically, yes, it does. That's what Deion Sanders is saying. So this is the extra step that he didn't give. He didn't explain all of that, but that's what he's saying. So to answer you, Aswan, yes, it does. It does communicate something different. All right. The fact that you can go to class and you can do well in school tells me that you probably can take that ability and it can translate over to the football field. Or you could take that ability and it can translate over to the corporate office. This is why, again, there are some jobs that require a college degree and some jobs only require a high school diploma. Why? Because the fact that you got a college degree does not necessarily mean that you can go be a data analyst at some Fortune 500 company. How do the two correlate? They correlate because your ability to succeed through 4 years of college means at least you understand structure, systems, and discipline, which means when you come here and we have structure, systems, and discipline, you've already proven that you can excel in such a situation. Whereas someone with a high school diploma, you have not proven it. So we're not going to put our time into talking to you because you haven't proven it here. Now, is it possible that someone with just a high school diploma could become great at a Fortune 500 company? Absolutely. But exceptions prove the rule. That's the point. That's the whole point that I'm making. Exceptions prove the rule. Deion's son, I think people are saying that Deion's son comes from either a divorce. I don't know exactly who. I don't know even know if Deion's kid came from a divorce, marriage, whatever. His son is an exception. Exceptions prove the rule. LeBron James, great leader. Seems to be a great leader to me. Now, when he's talking about social issues and stuff, he has really nothing to add to the conversation. But as far as on the basketball court as a player, he's a great leader. He comes from a baby mama household. Legendarily didn't know his father. Didn't have a dad at home. Don't know what his GPA was. I doubt it was a 3.5. I don't know. I don't know his GPA. Maybe it was a 4.0. Who knows? But LeBron James became great. He's an exception that proves the rule. Most kids who come from a single parent household who don't know their dad and are moving every 6 months or whatever his story was when LeBron was first coming up, most of them do not end up being 100 millionaires or billionaires and successful professionals. Most of them don't become LeBron James. All right. He is an exception that proves the rule. This is the point. So what Deion said about the quarterback and the O-line and the D-line are 100% verifiable based on subjective analysis. And we all understand this. The thing is, people just happen to, again, people are being fake mad because he said the quiet part out loud. That's all. That's all that happened here. He just said the quiet part out loud. So there are exceptions. Yes, there are high school graduates who can become great professionals, and there are college graduates who become failures in life and they end up in jail anyway. But again, that does not disprove it. Are any of you who has a college degree? Do you all understand that most college graduates end up making more money over the course of their careers than high school graduates? Can we all agree that that's a truism? College graduates, as a general rule, make more money than high school graduates over the course of their careers. We all can agree that that's true. Now, is it possible that a high school graduate can make more money than a college graduate? Of course. Again, LeBron James, he's made hundreds of millions of dollars playing basketball, which is more than many of his peers his same year that he graduated than they have made, even if they went on and did 4 years of college, a master's degree, a PhD, and whatever other law degree. LeBron James, with only a high school degree, has made more money than all of them. Does that mean that graduating from high school is good enough if you're trying to make as much money as possible? No, it does not. Exceptions do not invalidate a rule. They prove the rule. Let me see what else I got here. Anybody got a question or comment? Post it in the comment section. I'll address a couple. We got like 5 or 6 minutes here, so I'll address a couple comments and then we'll wrap this up. And the biggest point here, not the biggest point, I made the biggest points. Here's a point. Deion is one of hundreds of college football coaches at the collegiate level. All right, if he sees a talented enough player that doesn't fit the framework that he laid out, he'll probably break his own rules and recruit that player. Because he says, look, that player's talented enough, I'm going to take him anyway. All right, this player is great on the D-line. He got 2 parents at home, but he's so good, I'm going to recruit him anyway. Or this player has only 1 parent at home. He's a great offensive tackle. I'm going to recruit him anyway because he seems like he got a good head on his shoulders anyway. So I'm sure he will break the rules based on the talent that player has available. That does not invalidate the rule. It doesn't mean that the rule isn't the rule. All right, so all of y'all got to just understand this. And again, the race hustle is this people pretending to be mad about this subject, and they're not really mad about the subject because, again, you look at these same people who are doing this. Look at the people who have staffs. Those who have staffs and they have people working for them. Look how they make their decisions compared to what they're talking about. What Deion is doing, I guarantee you, they're making their decisions with the same framework, a similar framework to what Deion articulated. They just didn't say theirs out loud. And if you question them on it, they won't have much to say because then they would expose themselves and their whole hustle will fall apart. Actually, their hustle wouldn't fall apart. They can keep hustling because the people who they're selling to don't even notice the details. They just notice the stuff that gets them excited, which is anything that involves race. But if you go into the detail, those people the sheep don't notice that stuff. You're a good enough performer. If one person profiles you as not being good, so let's say you're a quarterback who comes from a baby mama household and you got a 2.5 GPA, but you're going to be the next Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. And Deion says, well, I'm not recruiting this kid because he don't have a father at home and he don't have a 3.5. So that kid can't go to Colorado because Deion's framework says no to this kid. So some of you, I understand you might be mad about that. Well, here's what that kid can do. How many other D1 college football programs are there besides Deion's? All right, if you're that good, remember that we're in a performance-based business. So people are getting mad about one coach saying what he wants for his program. If you're that good to even be considered by Deion and he rules you out because of his framework, that means you're good enough to go to a different college. And being that we're in a performance-based business, go perform somewhere else and prove them wrong. It ain't even nothing to argue about. If you're that good, just go somewhere else. How many of you ever played a sport for a coach who was a jerk and you didn't like the coach and they did something dumb or they did you wrong in some way, shape, or form? You ended up not being able to perform the way you wanted to on that team. Then you went to a different team and you proved yourself anyway. All right, did that other coach stop you? So if we just said that, then the whole conversation would be over. But see, this is the thing. This is why I told you, the race hustler, their whole hustle is to get people excited about this stuff that in the big picture doesn't even really matter. So let's say I came from a single parent household and I was a great quarterback and Deion said, well, Dre, I don't want you because you ain't got a dad at home. I'll say, all right, well, F you, Deion. I'm not going to play for Colorado. No, I'm going to go play for USC. I'm going to go play for Penn State. I'm going to go play for FIU. I'm going to go play for Miami. I'm going to go play for UF. And I'm going to make it to the NFL and make a whole bunch of money anyway. So who else in the situation? I didn't. So he still hated the generalization. Well, he didn't make a generalization. Okay. I will say he did make a generalization. He wants the nastiness. He wants the nastiness from I agree with the generalization. I agree with it. I 100% agree. And I just explained why. I gave the explanation of why. It's subjective. And again, Deion Sanders played in the NFL for several years. He played with the best of them, won championships. He's coached college for a few years and has been successful. And he just got hired he just upgraded his career to another level, which means subjectively he has some experience that is backing up what he's saying. I would guess. I would theorize he has some experience that backs up what he's saying. He didn't say it, but I would theorize that he does, given his background. If I was a basketball coach, I got some subjective experience that will lead to me wanting certain types of players. And I could tell by talking about them. All right. Not talking about them, by looking at them and talking to them. All right, I don't want this kind of player because I can see how he is. I can see how he conducts himself. I can see where he comes from. I can see who his friends are. I can see who his mom is. I can see that his dad's not around. You know what? I'm good. I'm good. Who's the DB? Who are you talking about? The thing is, with his experience, he knows what he knows. He's been in the locker room. That's the whole point. John Morant, I'm probably talking about that on YouTube. I'll probably do a YouTube video on that. All right, I got a call coming up in 2 minutes, y'all. I appreciate the time. I'm gonna do a whole podcast episode on this. It'll be out in a couple weeks on Deion and all this, where I'll go into more detail than I went in here. But I appreciate this engagement. Y'all have a good Sunday. Work on your game. Out here.